Recording. Welcome and thank you for joining us today. My name is Tina Jacobin. I'm the Assistant Director of Donor and Alumni Relations here at Shenandoah. At the end of our session today, we're going to be giving away 3 $25 gift cards. We hope that you can stay for the entire session so that you can be a part of our prize giveaway. We are so thankful to our title sponsor, the Army National Guard, for their support in making the entire symposium a reality. In addition, Zoom sessions this week are being sponsored by First Bank. Thank you, First Bank, and to all of our sponsors for helping make this symposium possible through your financial support. In addition to sponsoring our event, many of our sponsors are providing session content, and we are very grateful for that as well. Today, our session is on the topic of the big purchase. Welcome. This session is about buying houses and buying cars. We have 3 wonderful professionals in the fields of real estate, mortgage lending, and we have a car dealer. Each one is about to share information that I think you're going to find really beneficial. First, we're going to hear from Mark Francis of Icon Real Estate. Mark has been a part of the Winchester community for over 20 years and a realtor for almost as long. With an entrepreneurial mind and a desire to grow his career, Mark partnered in creating the real estate agency Icon Real Estate in 2018, which has grown to be a top 10 firm in the area with 10 agents working for the company. Mark has been a partner with Shenandoah University in assisting faculty, staff, and students with housing needs since 2013. His passion for the school stems from his wife being an alumni of SU and an active faculty member in the PA program. Mark has a BS degree in business from Wake Forest University. We're also going to hear from Ross Lehman, Integrity Mortgage Corporation. As a real estate investor and a homeowner myself, I've experienced firsthand both the financial and emotional benefits of purchasing real estate. Owning my own home has provided me with a level of pride and accomplishment that I want everyone to be able to experience. Real estate investments open the door to wealth building and have benefits in both the short and long term. I love guiding people as they build their investment and their future. Whether you're looking to purchase your first home, looking to make a change to better suit you and your family, or if you want to expand your investment portfolio, I'm honored to help you achieve your personal and financial dreams. Then we're also going to be hearing from Trey Kern of Kern Motor Company. Trey Kern is a 2001, there he is, graduate of Shenandoah University and a 2005 graduate of the NADA Dealer Candidate Academy. He's been a sales manager, general manager of Kern Motor Company for 18 years. He was a student athlete and he played for the first football team in 2000. Wow, I didn't know that, Trey. That's good to know. He was also named Shenandoah University's Male Athlete of the Year. Trey is married with 3 children. He lives in Winchester, just had to buy a car for his oldest daughter. Joining Trey today is Michael Whitaker, who's been a finance manager for Jim Stutzman Chevrolet and also Malloy Chevrolet before joining Kern Motor Company 1 year ago. Michael has 20 years of experience in automotive business and 5 years as a finance manager. So those are our professionals that are joining us today. I think I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to hand that Zoom mic over to Mark, and I'm going to unshare my screen because I think he is going to share some information with you. So Mark, take it away.
Sounds good. I'm going to work on sharing my screen also. And while I'm in the process of doing that, I just want to thank everybody for being a part of this today. And there are so many details to get into for real estate. We're going to keep this short and sweet and hopefully just cover the highlights. Everybody can see their screen, hopefully. And wanted just to give a quick summary of a little bit more detail about who I am, more than what Tina just shared. Yes, I am an owner of a real estate company, also a broker, which basically means that I'm in charge of all the other agents who work for us. But I've done numerous things in the world of real estate over many years. Started out by flipping houses, starting out by also doing property management, got my license back in 2003, which then turned into a career and turned into then owning a company. So it kind of is snowballed of being an entrepreneur in town over the years. And when it comes to real estate, you can deal with residential houses, commercial, land, investment properties, renovations, you name it, all those things. But beyond just real estate, I'm a part of our community here. As Tina shared, my wife is a faculty at SU. And so I'm actively involved in the world of Shenandoah University, which even before we started talking, that's why I asked about Buzzy. I got to have my picture with Buzzy. So that's something that we can look forward to. The next time we do a presentation like this, I have my picture with Buzzy in my icon office like Trey has. So that'll be something to look forward to. But over the many years of real estate, I've gotten a chance to really get to know our local area. And you going to school here may be thinking, well, I'm not going to necessarily plant my roots here, or maybe you are. But for me and how I do real estate, I've known the area for 20 years, and it's important to at least understand the real estate market. Important to understand whenever you're going to buy a house or even rent a house, to understand kind of the locations, where you want to live, and what it takes to get there. So just a quick kind of fun fact, stats that I wanted to share. For last year, in this particular area of Winchester and Frederick County, there were actually, the average sold prices of houses was $315,000. That seems to be a lot of money. So things have continually been increasing over the years, and the average price of over $315,000. The total homes sold in the area was over 2,300 that were sold in this area. The average days on market, which is sometimes not a stat you think too much about, was 39 days. Let me tell you right now, it is way below that. So the market has significantly taken a turn to be very competitive for buyers these days, which I'll talk about what that might mean. And the actual highest priced house that was sold in this area was over $1 million. So we're nowhere near what Northern Virginia brings of an average price per house. But you know what, to have $1 million house being sold in the area is still pretty impressive. So one thing that we're talking about here, this kind of big purchase concept, that you might be asking yourself, well, the other option is I can actually rent. So you're thinking to yourself, am I really ready to make that investment into buying something, or should I just rent? Well, let me just throw out a few quick ideas and stats that will help determine the question that you have of whether I'm going to buy something or rent something. When you're renting, maybe some of you guys are even renting an apartment or a condo or something off campus right now, and you'll realize when you rent, it's low maintenance. You don't really have to keep up with a lot of things. When you own a house, you are the maintenance person. You can't just call up your landlord and say, hey, the white water pipe is bursting, I need help doing that. When you own something, you are the maintenance person. And when you're renting, it's not as permanent. You sign a year lease potentially, and you're there for a short time, and then you move on. Buying something is a more of a commitment. So that's just another thought process of a deciding factor of whether you're going to buy or rent. When you rent something, the downside is you're really putting money into the landlord's pocket, and you're not making an investment. It's got what I call sunk costs. Those are costs that you're not going to see again, whether it be a down payment, whether it be the monthly payments that you make. For owning something, you're building equity. And that word essentially means that you're growing your investment to where you actually have money that's not necessarily liquid money, but you actually are growing something that if you were going to sell that house, you're actually going to make money. So having that ownership component versus renting is important. I say this word of ambivalent when it comes to renting. You might think that's a funny word when you think of renting, but you're not going to care so much about the house that you live in. And when you come to being an owner, I remember the first time that I bought my own house, I was a little stressed out because I'm like, wow, this whole big house is mine. And it was this tiny little house as well. But I felt like that I had something that I owned. This might be the biggest purchase of my life, I was thinking, and I want to take pride in keeping it up with it. You think of growing up as a kid and you just kind of throw the dishes in the sink and you do laundry and you see something lying around the carpet, it's dirty, you just kind of walk right over it. Well, when you own it and you're in your own house, you're going to keep up with things. And so there's pride in ownership, which is part of my motivation to say it makes sense to buy a house instead of rent. Especially in today's market, you're going to see prices in a range that are somewhat scary for renting. And if you had, and this is something that Ross will be able to touch on in a little bit, but if you have any option of getting a mortgage and being qualified for a loan, it would be crazy not to buy something right now, only because you'll see that the same house, if you're going to rent one house, and then if you're going to buy that exact same house, the rental payments are going to be significantly greater than what your mortgage payment would be. So from a financial standpoint, it's important to make those decisions, am I going to buy or rent? So I'm going to talk more specifically about purchasing a house right now, because in my opinion, that's the direction to go. I think it makes sense. And I'm going to talk to you about 3 key steps to actually buy your house. The first one, I'm a little biased, but it makes sense to find the right realtor. You think about, at the end of the season, you're doing taxes. Are you going to do your own taxes, or are you going to have an accountant do them? Sometimes it gets more complicated and you need an accountant. If you get busted doing something, and are you going to go represent yourself in court, or are you going to find a lawyer? Houses are the same way. You think you watch HGTV and it seems simple, but there's a lot that goes into buying a house. And so finding the right realtor is important. I threw these 5 key words up because for us at Icon Real Estate, where I work, the agents that work for me and with me, I make sure that they're experienced, that they're innovative, that they're personal, that they're dedicated, and that they're available. And in my opinion, those are key attributes and key skills to have in order to help somebody buy a house or even sell a house. When I meet a buyer for the first time, it's important for me to explain that I'm here to help you out, and I'm here to negotiate for you. I'm here to help find the right house for you and walk you through the whole process. And oh, by the way, it doesn't cost you anything. So if you're out there shopping for a house and you call up any old realtor who might have a listing, they're going to say, sure, that's great. And they'll take your money as far as you buying that house, and you're not going to have proper representation. And that listing agent, believe it or not, collects the fees to represent you and the seller. So having representation is no cost to you, and you actually have full representation to help you buy that house. And the purpose of having that representation is because you're going to need a guide throughout the entire process to purchase the house. I think it's really important to know that what a realtor brings is not just finding the house for you. You can do that on your own. You can get on any website these days and find the latest, greatest house that's popped up, that's active on the market. But to know all the different steps that go into the details of getting the lender, the title company, to an inspector, to making sure the appraisal happens right, to then getting it to closing, there is a process. And not that it's scary, but us agents, we do this day in, day out, week in, week out, and you might only do this 1 or 2 times in your life. So it's important to find the expert. So that's the first step, is find somebody who can help walk you through the process. The second step, I'm going to glaze over because we're actually going to hear from Ross, but I'm going to make a plug for him because you want to make sure you find the right lender. And when you have the right lender, this is somebody who's going to be responsive with good quality service. This is somebody who can easily communicate to you all the different options you have on the table with the rates. And this is somebody who wants to help keep your budget in mind. What will your monthly payment be? That's my key question that I ask any of my buyers, especially when you think in terms of making the step from renting a house to then buying a house. You have a monthly payment that you're making and a monthly budget. And it's no different than when you buy a house, you're gonna have a monthly payment that you need to make. So what's your budget? And you want to have a lender that understands that and can help keep you in your budget. The third concept is probably the biggest one. And how do you find the right house? It's when you go shopping and you're out there on the website, cruising all the different house options, or maybe you're driving around town and you see a sign, or maybe you see a specific location that you want to find. What are you looking for? And in my opinion, I think you should look at a house as an investment. So you want to choose a house that has long-term ability of growing and making, having that equity that you're growing into. That's something that if for some unknown reason in a few years you might want to sell it, that it would be an easy sale. I think of a big pool, of a big ocean, for example, and you can easily grab water from an ocean, and a pond is a little bit smaller, and then a puddle is a little bit smaller. Well, we want to make sure that we're finding a house that can be thrown into the ocean and not just a little pond, not just a little puddle, to have the biggest buyer potential down the road. So that's one thought, to make sure that you have the right investment in mind. I also suggest to buyers to balance your head and your heart. And what I mean by that is you can get caught up in the numbers really easily from a financial standpoint. And you can think to yourself, boy, is this the right house for me? Because is it too much money, or is it too little money, or what's the monthly payment going to be? And you're all caught up in just those kind of financial details that you get in your head. Or on the flip side, you can get caught up in the emotion of the purchase. And you say, this house is beautiful, it's gorgeous, it's exactly where I want to be. And you're not thinking about the money. So having the right balance of thinking critically from an investment standpoint and the numbers, but then is it the right fit for you and your family or whoever you're buying a house with? I think that's important to balance those two. And then finally, it's important for a house to be able to grow into it. I do suggest to people that if you have a certain budget, that if you underspend a house and you buy too little of a house for yourself, you're going to then have to find yourself to purchase another house down the road, and that's not going to be fun. So find a house that's going to allow you to have space to grow into, that's going to allow you to maximize the value of the house that you're looking for when you're in that moment. What can you afford? Not overspend, not underspend, but find the perfect house for you that you can grow. Maybe it's something with an unfinished basement. Maybe it's an area that you can add some gardening to, or maybe you can put something else into the house that'll help grow its equity and grow its value for you. So have room to grow with the house. So just in short, brief summary, remember, you got to find the right realtor. I think that's really important. Make sure you find the right lender to help collect, to help with the money. And then finding the right house is key. And that's something that the realtor is going to guide you through that entire process. So that, to me, summarizes really the big picture. Very high 30,000 foot value over the earth here as we're flying over this. And you want to get more in the details. It's easy to just talk to somebody and ask questions and find the right realtor to walk you through that process. So I want to just wrap up my time and just open it up to you guys and ask, do you have any thoughts or any questions or comments about that? And I'm really excited to be here. And before I do turn it over to Ross, I'll just see if you guys have any thoughts or questions.
Actually, I do have a quick question. What would you suggest, let's say, for a college student who's just out of, just graduated, is still working on their credit, has student loans? What would be the best living arrangement for them? Would it be to rent a house maybe, or if you could potentially buy a house, what other steps could you take for that?
Yeah, I know Ross will be able to dig into the the numbers part of that question. Let me hit the housing part of that, and he can touch on that in his presentation. From the house standpoint, if you do have roommates, that's a plus. I mean, I have buyers right now who are actually looking for houses that have Airbnb potential. Thinking in terms of, how can I save money and then have enough of a house to be able to grow as part of the growth concept that I was throwing out there. So if you're gonna, from a renting standpoint, it's always good to just know what your budget is and know how much you can spend, and then partner with people to be roommates. Buying a house is the same way. You can put you and 2 or 3 other people's names on the title of buying a house, and then you have shared ownership, shared responsibility. That way, one person isn't stuck with the note. And Ross can get into more of the details of what that looks like as well. But I think it's wise to think in terms of ownership as quick as possible, because it's a long-term commitment. But in the end, from my vantage point, renting should only be short-term. There's just, in today's world, the rental prices are sky high, and you're not getting enough call it bang for your buck, I guess. So that's I have financial answers to your question, but I'll let the true expert hit those for you.
Thank you.
Well, I think we can go ahead and turn the mic over to Ross. And I'm going to chime in there a little bit, Emily, and tell you when Mark talks about buying as quick as possible, I was 20 years old when I bought my first house. And so I've bought a couple in between, but I'm about 8 years away from having, and I never thought I'd be old enough to say this, but I'm about 8 years away from having a paid for house. So the sooner that you can get in on the buying, the better, because it does, it is going to save me money one day, but I'm not having to pay that mortgage. But
And I will say that there's the fear of a market crashing. And, there's the perspective of what happened in 2007 and 8 and 9 and 10. And it's a little scary. You're right. But through the long term, we have picked up, rebounced back as a market, and the houses that have gone down in their value are right now back up. So thinking long term, thinking big picture is exactly what Tina's saying, that you can then grow and purchase another house, and you have the proceeds from the first house that you bought that can snowball and grow into something bigger and bigger, and then ultimately own your house without a mortgage. Ross, how about that? So that would be the ultimate goal.
yeah. All righty, Ross, take it away. Tell us what we need to know about mortgages.
All right. Well, hey, I'm going to jump into mine too, but Emily, please feel free to ask that question in the end because I might forget it, and just ask it again, and I'll put my 2 cents into that on top of what Mark said. And Mark actually did a lot of stuff that I want to talk about too, that I think is really important. And what I really want to do with you guys today is help get you prepared for that home purchase. So let me get my screen up here to share with you guys, and hopefully you guys can see that okay. Can you give me a thumbs up, Tina, and let me know if you can see that? Okay, perfect. Well, thank you for having me here. I'm excited to be with you guys, talk about this. I feel passionately about real estate. I love real estate from just being a homeowner and also an investor myself. It's something that I love and I feel is super important for anybody. A lot of what Mark was saying, having to do with getting that equity, that ownership, that self-pride of having something that is yours. It's hard to compare that with almost anything else that you have compared to your own home. So I love doing that. I kind of consider myself as a mortgage advisor. I work over at Integrity Home Mortgage Company, which is a local mortgage company. We focus on residential mortgages. And I'm a loan officer there, but like I said, I see myself more as a mortgage advisor, helping to educate and facilitate people through the home buying process. So I have a couple things that I want to focus on today, but really there's a lot of stuff that I could do to talk about for a long period of time. So we'll give you the nuts and bolts for today, but we could talk about a lot of this for a longer period of time. So one of the reasons that Mark already started to hit on, and I feel is important as well, is why should you rent versus why should you buy? And I think Mark and I, we hit a lot of the same stuff. There are some valid reasons for renting, but they're usually short-lived and for a specific purpose. Renting should be your option when you're in a temporary position, such as you just moved from out of town, or you're only planning to be in an area for a short period of time. Some of the reasons, because leases are flexible. They're a year, they're 6 months, they're months to month. You're not needing to put as much time and effort like you would into a house as you would for a rental. There's also that little to no maintenance that Mark spoke about, those less upfront costs compared to home buying. And there are also less restrictions on your credit score and credit history, or there can be. Usually when it comes to renting, the landlord is what's determining what they will accept for credit history and credit scores. So there's a lot more flexibility there for them to accept something below what you might need in order to buy a house. So why buy a home? Buying a home is likely going to be the biggest investment that you're going to make. And millions of people choose homeownership for a reason, and you have to live somewhere. So you might as well make that place an investment as well, a place that you can put money into and be a wealth building tool, as opposed to rent, which is kind of throwing away your money each month. So some key differences between owning and renting. And the longer that you either own or rent, the more prominent you're going to see these changes. Okay. The first one is there's tax advantages to owning a home. You can deduct mortgage interest. I'm not an accountant, so talk to your accountant about what that looks like. But that is something that, as you become an adult and you grow, and seeing where you can help deduct, how much you have to pay to the tax man becomes important. Security. As long as you make your payments, you get to stay in that house. All right. If you're renting, a landlord can say, hey, your lease ends in 3 months. We're planning on selling the house, or we're not renting anymore. You're going to need to find a different place to stay. All right. You don't have the security like you do with buying a house. There's also inflation protection, which basically means that your rent is likely to increase over time. When your lease ends, there's probably going to be a renegotiation, and your rent might increase. That might be $20, $50, $100. But your mortgage payment, if you're getting into a fixed interest rate, your principal and interest is going to stay the same for the entire life of that loan. Okay. And that's when you can talk to a mortgage advisor, because there are different loan programs out there, but that is something that you can help protect yourself against. Investment. As an owner, the value of your property increases over time, as well as you're paying down the balance of your loan. So with both of those, you are gaining equity in that property, whereas you're not doing that with a rental property. So take a look at this. This is really simple. You might think that $1,500 a month, sure, that sounds like a lot. And in the scheme of things, you're like, well, it's just for a short time, not a big deal. Well, if you rent at $1,500 a month for 5 years, you've paid $90,000 to that landlord. That's $90,000 that they are putting right back into the mortgage and paying off their mortgage. All right. In 15 years, that's $300,000 that you've paid in rent. And that's just assuming that your rent payment doesn't go up, which I can pretty much guarantee you in 15 years, your rent is going to go up. All right. So you can see how you're not getting anything out of that, that rental. All right. So on top of that, you're going to be making paying your balances down over a period of time. You're also going to appreciate that property. All right. Now, this doesn't happen every single year, and it's not consistent from year to year, but let's just look at the last year. All right. Home values increased 8.1% from 2019 to 2020 alone. And it's expected to increase another 9.5% from last year to this year. Okay, so what does that look like in real life? If you had bought a house in 2015 for $250,000, it's likely that that same house would be worth around $310,000 or more today. That's at least a $60,000 gain in equity just by living in your house. All right, so you can start to see those gains of renting versus owning. All right. And like I said, those amounts change over time, but in general, real estate appreciates over time. All right. So one of the things that I really want to hit on as you guys start thinking about purchasing in the future are some tips to prepare yourself so that you are ready to go for that purchase. All right. And the first tip that I have is prepare your credit. Your credit is huge when it comes to home purchase, okay? While your score is important, it's also important for us to have an established credit history. The higher your score, the more options for loans are going to be available to you. I could probably spend a whole hour talking about credit, and I have with my clients before, because they've done some things that have hurt their credit, and we work at trying to improve that for them, all right? But if I could sum up what some key takeaways when it comes to your credit, it's this: keep your balances low and stay on time with your payments. Late payments and high balances on credit cards are going to have a huge effect on your credit. All right. So take a look at the graph that's there. You'll see that 35% of your credit score is your payment history, and 30% is the amount that you owe on those credit cards. So just those two 65% of how your credit is established is on your use of your credit, all right? Your payment history and how much those balances are, all right? So keep that in mind when you're using credit as to how is this affecting your credit score. And one last tip on that is if you don't already, get something that you can monitor that on. Whether it's Credit Karma or you have a credit card that gives you your FICO score, they're not exactly the same score models that we use, but you can help see and navigate whether your score is going up, going down, and give you an idea of what that looks like. Tip number 2 is solidify a stable employment and income history. When it comes to income, the biggest takeaway is keeping a job, even if it's not your dream job. Okay, we look at income. We want to see that income is going to be stable and likely to continue. So having a good work history is essential for most loan programs. So working steady hours, avoiding job hopping, and looking for ways to obtain additional income is going to be extremely helpful in showing that your income is stable and likely to continue. All right. If you are changing jobs to obviously get a higher income, don't do that out of fear that it's going to, change and mess it up. Okay. That's a good improvement. But what we don't want to see is people changing jobs every 3 months. It just shows that you might not be as stable. Tip number 3, saving for a down payment and closing costs. All right. Saving your money ahead of time is important. While there are 100% financing programs available, having some cash of your own will open up your loan options to ones that might be better suited for you with a small down payment. Either way, cash is king. You can still decide to use a no down payment program if you wish, but you still have the other options as well. One good thing about having a down payment is that you can help negotiate with closing costs. All right, and that's where someone like Mark Francis or myself can help you as well and help negotiate whether we need those closing costs. And I know this would probably be something Mark would talk to you about in person, but in a market such as what we have today, a lot of people are not assisting in closing costs like they do in more of a buyer's market. So having some money set aside for those closing costs can put you at an advantage to some other people that might not have that. Tip number 4, avoid large monthly debts. So when we're determining your ability to purchase a home, we're going to be evaluating your debt to income, which means we will look at your monthly income compared to your monthly debts. And we need to keep those ratios below a certain amount because you're still going to have to pay for things like food and clothes, insurance, getting your morning coffee every day. So things like that. So we can't go above a certain ratio in order to get you qualified. And not to hit on the auto industry, because I know they're coming up next, but one of the things that we see that is people come out and they get vehicles that are really expensive. Okay. And that's where you want to talk to someone, your finance person when you're getting your car and just say, hey, look, home buying is one of my goals in the next couple of months. What can we do for the financing to keep that payment lower? Vehicles are essential for everyday living, but in my experience, they've also been one of the deterrents from people to be able to afford the home that they want to buy. So when you're looking towards the future, just consider when is the right time to buy that new car. All right. To give you an idea, right now, purchasing a new car with a $500 a month payment could reduce your purchasing ability for a house by as much as about $100,000. That's a significant amount. So keep that in mind. If you're looking at getting a new car or you're just looking for financing for a vehicle, let them know that. Look at something that might have a lower monthly payment because that's what we're looking at is that monthly debt. All right. Tip number 5, start making the payment before you buy. This is one of my favorite pieces of advice to tell people if they're just starting the home buying process and they're thinking they're going to buy in 4, 6, 8, 10 months. All right. Set aside what you think that budget is going to be for your mortgage and start paying that payment. you're going to, what I want you to do is determine what is that payment, where do you feel comfortable, as well as what's the top end of your budget, your monthly budget. And so let's say you want to buy a house and it's going to be $1,200 a month. Your current rent is $700 a month. Go ahead and put that additional $500 a month into a savings account. You're going to soon realize whether that $1,200 a month payment is doable or whether you feel like that's stretching you too thin. And it's better to do that before you buy the house than when you're in the house. So the other advantage is you're going to save money in the process that you can use for that down payment or closing costs. The last tip is prepare by talking with a mortgage professional. This is the last one. I think it's the most important one because we get to talk about all those other things that we talked about and make it specific for you. So talk about it before you decide to buy so we can get your plan in place. I can help get you prepared so that you're ready to go with your purchase and know exactly what the plan is. The other thing is, even if you have a lender, get a real estate agent too. They can start sending you houses, that are in the price range you might be looking for. And Mark Francis is fantastic at sitting down and talking with you about what the future might hold. Even if you're not ready to go and buy right now, getting prepared, talking to a real estate agent, talking to a lender, getting all your ducks in a row, make the process a whole lot easier for you. And I would say my clients that are the most prepared have the smoothest transactions because they've gotten themselves prepared and gotten everything ready to go. There's no cost to doing this. You don't pay Mark Francis or I for our time. So there's no cost. There's no downside for you doing that ahead of time. So that was the last thing. Thank you for letting me ramble on for the last few minutes. I do believe that home ownership is attainable for nearly everyone, and I'm excited to help anyone in the midst of that process. So are there any questions that I can help you guys with?
So me and my husband, we were thinking about buying because our lease is up on our townhouse in July.
Mhm.
So we actually, I think we're going to decide to wait another year in order just to get more prepared because, I mean, we haven't really saved up much, but I do see where renting is so much more than buying. And we have 2 dogs, so it's really hard to find a place that accepts pets that is within our budget. So I probably will. I think I will give you a call for sure
Please do.
to get in that right direction. Because I think a year will be good because we've been working at it for a couple years, even though we've had some hiccups in the past. But especially with me being in college, I just graduated in December, and me not really working, and he was pulling everything. So just trying to get our ducks in a row.
Sure. No, and I know there wasn't really a question there, and that's okay. Just to speak to that is, I think that's great to, even if you're looking to buy in a year, let's go ahead and talk now. I would probably say 50% of the people that say, hey, I'm going to buy in 6 months or a year, find out they're ready to go. And there's like, well, why wait? Let's go ahead and do it. Or, the other half is like, that was our plan. We still want to achieve X, Y, and Z. But now we have all the pieces in place to be able to, achieve what you want in that year.
And I'll just chime in to basically say, and then what the true facts are of what your budget is. So when you're shopping, just perusing online, looking at stuff, if you don't have a true understanding of what the payments are going to look like and what your monthly amount would be, then you don't really know what the value of your house could be. And so Ross would guide you through that. So it's the whole partnership of house shopping and understanding the money all at the same time.
Yeah. And the good thing too is, just to piggyback on top of what Mark is saying is, he can then get you set up so that you can see within that price range, what type of houses are you going to be looking at? and you're like, okay, that does fall in line with what my budget is, or maybe that's too much house for me, or maybe that's not enough house. We want to be able to have a yard for those dogs to run in, but we need to be able to save X number of dollars, or have an income of X number of dollars to be able to achieve that. So he can put you on listings to be able to see what is currently available to get you prepared for what's coming.
And Ross, any lender is the first step. I personally will not go house shopping with somebody who has not spoken to a lender and
Exactly.
has been approved. Because
talk to me first.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. Any other questions? And Emily, remind me what your question was, because I know I wanted to speak to that, but remind me what that question was.
It was along the lines of, what would you recommend, like living arrangements wise, what would you recommend for like a recent college graduate who has basically, let's say, little bit of years of building credit and probably still hasn't found that ideal job to put them in a position to find the house of their dreams, per se?
Yeah, and I'll speak to that a little bit, because I hear all the time the house of my dreams. And I think there is something to be said about buying the house for what suits you now, so that you can prepare for that dream house that's later. Okay. And that's something that we can talk about, something that's individual for you. Because there's all different options you can go with that route. And now's the perfect time, because I've had people that, they just want their own house. It's a small house so that they can build some equity to maybe rent it out later. I've had other people that are like, I don't have a whole lot of income now, but I have a lot of friends that want to buy. So maybe I buy the house and then I rent out 3 rooms to my friends, and now I'm living rent-free in a house. So there's all different avenues that you can go with that, and finding out something that works for you is important.
Thank you.
Yep.
I got a question for you, Ross.
Sure.
So I'm always shocked when people find out the score that they need to buy a house, because I think a lot of people think they need an 800 score to buy a house. And we know that when you're starting out and you've got new credit, you don't start out with an 800 score. So what is the minimum score needed in order to buy a house?
Yeah, you will see differences out there, because some of it is set by investors and some of it is set by certain companies. So the long answer to yours is that credit score of 580 is doable. Our company put it at a 620. And that's for certain loan programs. Okay, so we would want something above that in order to do something. All right, and those can change from time to time. All right, so always be in contact with someone like me about what can change. For example, last year during the time of COVID, they became a little bit more stricter about those credit scores. All right, and generally what happens is, even if you're not there yet, what we look at is, where could we be and how do we get you there? All right, so I would say finding out where you're at is the first piece of that puzzle, because if you don't know, you can't move forward. And that's where we can help you, is finding out where are you now and what do we need to either get you there, or get you in a better position so that you may not have as many fees when you go to purchase. So I know it's not a cut and dry answer, but a little bit of yeah.
No, but I think it gives them a range, because we talk about credit score, and we did financial literacy yesterday, but we didn't get into specifics of like specifically what type of score is needed. And I'm going to ask Trey the same question when it comes to cars, because I know it's going to vary. Lots of times with used cars, you have to have better credit because you don't have as much, the car might, be older, and sometimes it's harder to get a used car than it is to get a new car. So I'm going to ask him these same questions, but I think specifics, like the other specific question, and I know this will vary based on your credit score because it's going to depend on the rate that you get. But we talked about an average priced house in Winchester being $315,000. So what does $315,000 look like in a monthly mortgage if you put just the regular, like 3 to 5% down? And again, I know it's going to vary for rate, but on average, what would that
Yeah,
be?
so on average, you'll be looking from anywhere from around 13 to 1500 a month, maybe just slightly above that, depending on a loan program with less down that might require a higher interest rate. So I would probably go with anywhere from 13 to around 1500 as an average for a $300,000 purchase. All right. So if you start looking around for what's for rent in that amount, you're probably going to see a big difference between what you could buy at 300, 350 compared to what those are renting at, at 13 to 1500 a month.
Mm-hmm. Very good. And I have a loan calculator app on my phone. And if you guys are buyers and thinking of buying and you want to like tweak out what the payment's going to be, it doesn't include your taxes. It might not include homeowners association fees and things that are going to be added into that payment, but it gives you a general idea of what that'll be. So if you're shopping, it's nice to know what you're paying for it.
Yeah.
All righty. Well, any other questions before we jump on to the car portion of our big
I have a
purchase?
question.
No.
I live in Northern Virginia.
Oh, who's that?
Can I go ahead?
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. I live in Northern Virginia, specifically Alexandria. But I realize that the houses here are really expensive, even though they are really old. So it looks like most people are now moving towards Stafford, Fredericksburg area. So if you want a value for money, is it better to buy in a dense populated neighborhood that is expensive, or is it better to move outskirts and buy at a cheaper price?
I'll start with answering that. And that's where I mentioned the concept of balancing your head with your heart. So you have to understand, like, emotionally, where does it make sense for you to live and what looks good and where you want, with all the bells and whistles and fun things. But then you have to factor in what can you afford. Also with the long term in mind of, like, if you were going to sell this house, where's the maximum number of buyers that would come back and actually buy that house? I mean, I know the Northern Virginia market is crazy. And I also know our area here, there's houses that are very inexpensive if you drive, for example, a half hour outside of our town of Winchester. But not a lot of people are willing to go out there. And so if you were going to buy a house, Fredericksburg, for example, you mentioned, that's a very popular area. But if you're going to go somewhere outside of DC that's in a not a popular area, it would be more challenging, and it's a lower investment, and it's a lower price for that reason. It's a lower price because there's a smaller amount of people who are willing to buy that house. So you have to really balance what's in it for you. What, are you willing to make a hour and a half commute versus a half hour commute? Are you willing to give up, having a big yard versus a small yard? So balancing the emotional component of what you need with the price, and then think in terms of the investment. So that's a long-winded, big picture answer to your question. It's challenging and it's personal. And so as you start doing the shopping and you see where the houses are and you see in person what they look like for the condition, like you said, it's not good condition, you'll then know, I'm not willing to live in that condition. And you'll have to figure out a way to go to a location that has the kind of house you want for the price you can afford.
Thank you.
Good question. Any more before we pass the mic over?
Yes, I guess this is like more for Ross, but what is your advice for, someone who's about to graduate and would like to buy a house eventually, but has student loans?
Yeah, so student loans are, they can be difficult when you're starting to, look at buying a house, but they also are a benefit because it helps get you into that job that you want as well. So when it comes to student loans, there's different ways that we need to, or that we help, calculate what those monthly liabilities are going to be for you. One of the things that I do, kind of recommend is be in conversation with your loan servicers, because there's a different way that we calculate if your loans are in deferment, which tends to be what they are when you first come out of school. They are deferred for a period of time. And we have to use a different calculation for if you're maybe on an income-based plan. And, sometimes we can take a lower monthly amount because of that. So I don't think it's ever too early to have that conversation and be able to see, okay, this is what we're thinking of doing. How is that going to affect you? Because student loans are going to be a part of your monthly payment, especially when you're first coming out and your income might be on the lower side because you're waiting to get that job that you were anticipating getting. So yeah, I would say, setting that plan up for you individually would be extremely important, especially since we'll have student loans involved with it.
Thank you.
All right. Any more questions? You guys made me liars today. I'm like, oh, they don't like to ask questions. We won't get a lot of questions. And there we are. We got great questions today. I love it. All right. Well, we're going to pass the mic over to Trey. Trey is going to talk to us on how to buy a car.
Yes, those are great presentations. I appreciate it. I'm Trey Kern, here at Kern Buick GMC in Winchester, Virginia. I've got Michael Whitaker with me. He's my finance expert. So I don't have a pretty slideshow like Ross and Mark, but I'm just going to start answering some of the questions that Tina and I talked about. And the first one is what should you know about the difference between buying a new car and buying a used car? And I mean, some of the things are obvious. Obviously, a new car has never been titled. The advantages would be that you have special financing offers that are available. There's rebates that are available. When you get to a used car, there's no, the only thing you talk about is the price of the car. There's no incentives. So those are simple things. We have to disclose any damage that would be on a new car if there was a transportation damage coming from the truck. Anything over 3% of the MSRP has got to be reported. So you got the peace of mind knowing that the car is clean, brand new. That's a good thing. Certified used cars is the closest thing to like a new car. Most dealers do that, and we take them through a 172-point inspection. You get extra warranty. The advantage of a new car would be that it does have warranty versus a used car not having as long a warranty. Getting it certified does help that. So, I mean, that would be how I would answer that. When buying a new car, how do you choose one? How do you know which one to choose? Are there websites that give performance data so you can comparison shop? We spend money as dealers with a lot of money with Auto Trader, Cars.com, Edmunds. Those are kind of the three big ones that we use, and you can comparison shop at those sites. My staff is pretty knowledgeable and we train often. So if you have questions between how our GMCs would line up against Toyota or a Ford, we try to have those answers. And just your simple Google searches, you can gain so much information by doing things that way. The next question, talking about financing, how important is it to come up with your own financing? I would say that it's not necessarily that important. It's good to know that you can get financing. We have multiple banks that we use here, so it ranges, from low end credit to high end credit, and we use Ally, GM Financial, BB&T, Fifth Third, and we've got multiple bank reps that come here all the time. And they specialize in, every car deal is a little different. You have a trade in that you owe a little bit of money on, and you're trying to ask for a little bit more. A certain bank likes that type of deal versus a guy that has an 800 credit score and is putting a bunch of money down. I would give the advice to young people when buying a car, realize that the shorter the term that you can manage is going to get you the better terms, you're going to pay less interest. And if you can put money down, you're financing less money. That's going to save you more money in the long run. You don't want to put yourself in a bad spot, but if you can afford to do so, I would definitely suggest doing that. The next question, if my car's in decent shape, should I sell it outright or trade it in? It's interesting here in Virginia, selling it outright would be at a better advantage. There's certain states like West Virginia that if you trade your car in, you get a tax credit for it. So that can make a difference. The only problem with selling a car outright, a lot of times you will get more money for it, but you're dealing with someone. If the car breaks down, they could come back at you. When you trade the car to us, you don't have to worry about the DMV. Right now with COVID and all that, the DMV is a mess. So you don't have to worry about that problem. So I guess that's kind of I don't know if I answered that correctly, but it's different per state, really on what you want to do and on how to sell your car. Where are the best sources for car loans? I've always been told that credit unions are the most competitive. Credit unions are competitive, but I'll tell you, a majority of the time, a large majority of the time, we have banks here at the dealerships, and I'm sure other dealerships in town do as well, that can be at that rate or even better than credit unions. So, like I said, credit unions one bank, and we deal with multiple banks. So I wouldn't blame you to check a credit union, but I wouldn't be also afraid to to see what we have to offer. When banks compete, you win, they say. The next question is, what type of credit score do I need to get a good rate on a car? From my experience, anything that's a 700 plus is kind of your prime deal. Over 8's even better. Michael has told me that, I've seen there's been times where we're getting 500 plus beacon scores approved. Once again, if you're putting money down, if you're if you're on the right car, and you've got a steady job, understand that a bank wants to know that you're working, that you have income. And if you sincerely look able to buy a car, there's banks out there that will get you a loan. So if you struggle with your student debt and what have you, keep paying those things. Keep showing that you're a responsible person, and things will look up for you. Are buying warranties or extended warranties advisable? I'm gonna let Mr. Whitaker talk about this, because this is what he does every day. I will say on my behalf, I just bought a car for my daughter. I got a 16-year-old daughter, just started driving, and I bought one myself. I love the peace of mind of knowing that when I have the car, for the next 4 years, if something big breaks, I don't have to stress about it. So I advise to do so. Mike, I don't know if you would chime in and what you would say.
I think that it's ultimately up to the customer's decision what they want to do, if they want to put a service contract or not. Typically, in the long run, is going to protect your finances, protect you for any unforeseen costs for repairs. The vehicles that we're producing nowadays, 2019s, 2020s, 2021s, they're very complex. A lot of electronics, a lot of gadgets. These aren't things that we can work on ourselves. That's why we have shops. And your typical repair costs can run anywhere from $2,200, $2,600. I've seen shop bills that are over $4,000 or $5,000. So when you purchase a service contract, you're insuring for the next 4, 5, 6, 7 years, depending upon the term that you select, that if something does come up, that you're not going to be responsible for paying for that repair. So they offer a lot of peace of mind. If you're able to pay that $4,000 or $5,000 or $6,000 repair or $3,000 repair, and you don't mind spending that money or having that potentially happen, most people like the peace of mind of service contract. So.
Then the next question is, if I have cash, does that give me more negotiating power? It really doesn't. Dealers don't, and I think that was an old way of thinking. We're fine if you finance now. It could like we said, having cash can help you get a better terms with your bank. With the financing that you're doing. But I wouldn't say that it gives you more negotiating power. When buying a used car, what is Kelley Blue Book value and what do I need to know about it? A majority of dealers that I know do use Kelley Blue Book. We do here. It's a great guide to see what you think your car is worth. Make note that when you are driving your car, the condition of the car is important, and Kelley Blue Book sometimes can't recognize that. You've done all your service records, you've kept your tires up, you fixed that dent that you accidentally got in the parking lot. When you do those things, that really helps your value, and sometimes you'll get more of the top end of those Kelley Blue Book values by being, by taking care of your cars. But Kelley Blue Book is definitely something to go by. Last thing here, what kind of things should I do to make sure that I'm not buying a used clunker? We give out free Carfax reports, and you can certainly check the Carfax and see if there's any damage, any major things that have happened to the car. You could take you could take one of our used cars to a mechanic and have them check it out. Some of the other Ross and Mark has said, I guess from our standpoint at Kern Motor Company, we are, I would say, a reputable dealership. Before we put anything out here, we fix things. We average in reconditioning before we put a car out. We average at least $1,500 of expense. I mean, so we're going to fix things before before it happens. So the reputation of a dealership does matter. And plus, if something like that happens, transmission goes out 2 weeks after you bought the car, we're not going to stick you with it. It's just, I look at it as if I was buying it myself. If I bought something and 2 weeks later it broke, that's not right. So, some of the best advertising I think we've done in years past is taking care of someone that has had that unfortunate thing. So they're machines, and you never know what the heck's going to happen sometimes. But that's how I would answer that. Check online reviews of dealerships and just look it over real well and check your Carfax reports, and that's what I have. I can answer some more questions, or you can, if you want me to hit on anything else, Tina, I certainly can. Of course, Michael here, he's a wealth of knowledge. I just talk a lot.
I think you covered most of the questions that I thought they would be thinking about when buying a car. I wondered, and I can't remember. So if you were to buy a used car and you don't have a warranty, is there any, you said 2 weeks, so I'm going to assume that there's no legal repercussions if let's say I'm not a reputable dealer. I sell a car, 2 weeks later the transmission blows up, then the buyer's stuck, right? Like the dealer doesn't have to do anything.
Well, that's correct. We sell cars here, and we give basically 1,000-mile, 1 month, a 50/50 warranty if it's a higher mileage used car. So here we would take care of half the cost. Sometimes I end up just doing it all, but yeah, if it's as is, it is as is. As soon as you drive off the curb, it's your car. So yeah,
It's your car. That's what I was.
You're comfortable with it, right?
Right. And then you touched a little bit because I was getting specific about credit scores, that you have approved some 500, and I would imagine, like you said, that would be somebody who had a good solid work history, who had a decent amount of a down payment down, and they bought a car that was in really good shape, that the bank wasn't afraid was going to blow up in a couple of years, right? Those would be
100%. In fact, we have banks that will go all the way to someone who has no score. There are options out there. You typically need a significant down payment to be able to get a loan when you have no score, or a cosigner. A cosigner that has a strong score is often the way to get yourself in the door on your first car loan. It's what I would recommend. If you have a cosigner, and a large down payment, and you're just getting started, that's the best combo there, to get you the
Gotcha.
best terms, to get you the best, overall loan.
Now, a cosigner is taking on the liability of that loan. So if the
Correct.
person doesn't pay, they're stuck with it, right?
They are 100% responsible, just as they're both 100% responsible. That's correct.
Okay. All right.
I have
What
a
if-
question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, I'm really into the buying a new car because I had issues with my old car, but I bought a new one this time around. But I helped a friend purchase a car, but when we went to the dealership, the agent recommended leasing instead of buying a new one because the friend I went with said, oh, the buying a new car, the monthly payment is a little bit on the high side, so she rather lease to buy. So what is your take on buying outright, like buying and paying monthly installment, and leasing and later buying it? That's what the agent told her to do. That lease it for a number of years and later come back and buy it and pay the difference like she bought it, like she was going to buy it when she came the first time. So I was kind of, what is the difference between the two?
Well, leasing is kind of like when they were touching on buying homes. You can buy a house, you can rent a house. Uh, we do a lot of leasing. We do, kind of a blend of leasing and retail purchases here. And I would say that when you're leasing, it's a very short-term commitment, kind of like renting a house. Typically, your payments with a lease are typically a little bit less than what they would be for a purchase. But a lease is only short-term, and it's kind of like dating the car. So you may only have a 2 or 3 year lease contract, so that's all you're responsible for. When you purchase a vehicle, you're probably going to finance it for 5 or 6 or maybe even 7 years. But at the end of that term, you own something. So you may pay a little bit more per month, but you actually have a possession, something that you actually own and can continue to drive. Whereas with a lease, at the end of a 2 or 3 or 4 year lease, you have to make a decision to either walk away and have no car, purchase or lease again, or buy out your lease.
I'll add to that. When thinking about whether you want to lease or buy, you want to check with your taxes as far as your local area. Like, I mean, in Winchester, there's a personal property tax. So when you lease a car, you still pay personal property tax just as like you would have bought it brand new. Some states aren't that way. That makes it a little bit less advantageous to lease here in Winchester and Virginia. But so you want to ask that question and check your personal property taxes, because I've had some people upset about that in the past.
That's good to know. I didn't know you had to pay your personal property tax on a lease.
You still do.
You do.
Huh.
Now, like other states, other states are different. It just depends state to state. In West Virginia, they charge a monthly use tax. So it just depends.
West Virginia's got some real advantages to the car industry, it sounds like.
Wild and wonderful.
Wild and wonderful. All right. So do we have any other questions?
Yes. Do you have any suggestions on how to prevent going to like a non-reputable dealership?
Honestly, I think talking to some friends that you trust, maybe some family members that have bought vehicles in the past and had good experiences. Another good way is, honestly, I mean, just look at Yelp, look at Google reviews. You're going to want to look for dealers that have large numbers of reviews. You don't want to look for a dealer that has 15 reviews and they have 5 stars and that's all they've got, or they have reviews by all their employees. You want to look online for reviews, or family members or friends that you trust. Just because they had one good experience, I'd dig a little bit deeper. A lot of dealerships, there's a lot of choices out there. Look for your reviews and your referrals from people that you know or with reputable sources.
And you know what? I'm going to second that. I bought a used car for my daughter, and I was 3 months after I paid for it outright. I was 3 months. The dealer had not sent me the title. And I was kicking myself. I was like, Tina, how could you be so stupid? Your dad was a used car dealer. You know better. You should have never walked out without that title. Anyway, I did in the end get the title, but in that interim, I went back online and thought, how did I miss this? And there were really bad reviews about this dealer. There were tons of bad reviews. I was searching on Car Gurus, and had I gone that extra mile and looked at the reviews of that dealer, I probably never would have went to that dealer. Probably never would have done it. And so I do that from now on. I was really heavy on those reviews. If you see one, you might just see some angry person who, didn't get a good car. But if you see 6, 7, 8 reviews and they're kind of saying the same thing, that's a red flag. That's a red flag. So that's good advice to check those reviews. And everything is out there. Yelp, Car Gurus, I forget the other, Auto Trader. They all have dealer reviews on there.
Even Google.
Even Google. You're right. Google reviews. And I wouldn't tick somebody for 1 or 2 bad reviews. You might, especially if there's 1,000 reviews given and they've only got like 1 or 2 bad ones. Chances are, they're good, still a good dealer. But if you start seeing a pattern, and then. All righty. Any other questions before we go to the trivia portion?
Yeah, I have one more question.
Go for it.
With buying a new car, when you get in there, they want you to buy some add-ons like extended warranty, extended maintenance. What is your take, especially when you're buying a brand new car? Would you think it's to be better to buy all those kind of add-ons, or it doesn't really matter because the extended warranties, like the manufacturer's warranty, after 2 years it expires, so you're thinking of maybe buying it or not buying it? Because you think with a new car, after some couple of years, maybe 8, 10 years before, you'll be having issues with about mechanical issues or electrical issues, so you don't want to buy it because all those add-ons add some thousands of dollars to the cost of the car. So what is your take on those add-ons?
I'll let Michael, this is his expertise for sure.
I would say, it depends on your comfort level. There are some people that are totally comfortable and confident that nothing will ever break on their vehicle. And most vehicles nowadays come with a 336 bumper to bumper, 3-year 36,000 mile bumper to bumper, 5-year 60,000 powertrain, roadside assistance. A lot of people will be comfortable with that. If you're going to keep it 8 years, to say that it might make it 8 years before you start having problems, vehicles typically, we hope they don't, but they do. They're just like the human body. You can have problems at age 5 or age 85. So the reason that we offer those is they're not some magical protection. They're there to ensure that you would not be caught with any out-of-pocket costs if something did happen. Typical buyers, you got to look at what your buying cycle is. If you're going to trade every 3 years, you're going to trade every 6 years or every 10 years. If you're trading every 3 years and you're going to be covered under the manufacturer's coverage, there's no reason to consider a service contract. Now, with the maintenance plans, you might want to consider. Typically, your maintenance plans that will cover your oil changes, tire rotation, filters, fluids, things like that. Typically, most of the maintenance plans will save you maybe $10 a maintenance visit, but they do add up if you attempt to do your maintenance at the dealership. In the long run, they will save you. But it's more of your comfort level. Again, if you're trading every 3 years, there's really not much reason to think of a service contract as long as you're going to be under the manufacturer's coverage. But if you're going to keep it 8 or 10 years, chances are, something could happen. And when they do happen, they're not $100 to fix anymore.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Any more? I'm going to go with those trivia questions. I got 3 of them. Okay. So here's how it works. Put the answer in the chat. The first person who puts the answer in the chat will win $25. All right. First question. This is the real estate question. What is the average price of a house in Winchester right now? Oh, Emily, you're so fast. Look at everybody. Everybody was paying attention. Emily, you're the big winner today. I do believe I have your email, so you don't have to send me that today. Okay, next question. Mortgage question. If you bought a house in 2015 for $250,000, what might your house be worth based on the percentages of increase? What would it be worth today? Oh, Ross, double check my slide here. I don't think I have the answer. I don't think the answer's in there. Can you see the answer in the chat?
And you said 300 or 250,000, right?
Yeah, it was in your PowerPoint.
Yep, it was 310,000.
Ah, we don't have a winner today. Let's see here. Maybe I can. Okay, let's go to the third question. And this was a new little fun fact for me today. What state gives you a tax credit for trading in your car? Oh, Sydney, I think you got it because you, yeah, WVA. Sydney got in there first. All right, Sydney, you're the winner. All right. Ross, can you think of another question we'll give them a second chance. Well, if you can, I just
Sure,
thought.
yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
From 2019 to 2020, what was the average increase in percentage of houses?
Close.
Close. Up. There we go. Emily got it. 8.1%.
You are a beast. All right, Emily, you're a big winner today. I want to thank you guys for joining us. This was a lot of fun. I feel like this was really useful information. I think they're gonna have a good takeaway with this. We want to thank you all for joining us today. We want to thank our sponsors, and we want to I'm going to put the screen up here of our final sponsors and remind you that Thursday we're going to be doing home skills, and I'm going to be chiming in on that one. We're also going to have Barry Schnorr of our maintenance department and Janice Hott from the pharmacy. I think, is she pharmacy or HSB? I can't remember her title, but they're going to help me out with explaining some life skills. So come back on the same link Thursday at 2:00. Thank you so much. We'll talk to y'all later.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks, Ross. Thanks, Trey. Thanks, Mark.
Have a good rest of your day.